The gaze. Have you ever heard of that? It's likely to be yes. Gaze, as its name implies, refers to our eyes. It is often said that the eyes are the windows of the soul, and that's why our gaze is very purposeful. The gaze represents who we are, where we come from, and even gender. The gaze brings different attitudes. If you look too long at a person, other people will judge you. But if you enjoy the beauty of artwork, enjoy a movie, if you stare long enough to feel it, no one will say anything. That is the difference, and only the gaze in art can be like that. The author's meaning through the gaze, the viewer attitude towards the artwork through the gaze, and our expectation. The theories of looking in art and society give us a deeper perception of the world that reveals itself to us gradually. And not surprisingly, the gaze can also point out to what gender we are. What is the difference between the gaze of two genders? Now we move to the male gaze and female gaze.
So, what is male gaze? In general, the male gaze is usually defined as the way people see women, which is influenced by the patriarchal society, as sexual objects for the viewer pleasure. For example, in a typical female nude, a woman is posed so that her body is on display for the viewer, who is implied to be male. In the visual and theatrical representations of narrative cinema, the male gaze has three perspectives: the man behind the camera, the male characters in the film story, and the male spectators of the work. Not only in the cinema, almost every visual-looking practice includes the male gaze, which is the consequence of the patriarchy from history, not to mention painting, photograph, and advertisement. So, the controversial concern among everything that has just been mentioned is the idea that the locus of the power in the field of the gaze is a male viewing position. From this, the products that we consume reflect an unconsciously patriarchal perspective in which female characters appear as objects of desire.
Je t'aime au futur, je t'aime à tous les temps.
Women appear as an object, sexual organs for men, passive sex scene, usually a supporting character or a reward for the man's victory. Male characters and viewers will take pleasure in the act of looking women on the screen.
Whose dream is it anyway? The man or the woman?
It's her dream, of course, to be admired and desired by men.
But it's the male gaze.
This is what John Berger called men act, women appear. He observed that the tradition of the nude had almost exclusively involved men in the act of role of the artist, with women serving as models posed to optimize the male spectator viewing pleasure. And let's take a look and analyze this poster of the movie Where the Truth Lies. While everything is dual-toned with blue color, the body of the girl in the center of the poster is colorful, emphasizing her seductive naked body. Especially, she is sitting, turning back toward us, and the camera's angle is set up to look from the bottom up. Every element just directs our eyes into her. We are also the one who is looking at her, and everything just presents her passive position. Contrary, the men who are looking at her, we can clearly see their faces. They are wearing clothes and totally superior in this position, and their gesture look like they have the right to make decisions on this lady, take control of her, or else at least they are judging her body and looking at her as an object. And it provokes audience, especially men, a sexual desire when looking at the poster, and successfully invite the male viewers to see the movie in order to enjoy this gaze, which is kind of offensive and does not respect women. But wait a second, why do we have to understand male gaze? Remember that in psychoanalytic film criticism, the gaze is not the act of looking itself, but the viewing relationship characteristic of a particular set of a social circumstance, which we call the field of the gaze. So, first, if we are not aware of the male gaze, gender oppression in which the women are always objects and passive will always exist. Women have to perform a certain gender role and responsibility which is expected by society rather than their wish. This will go to the unconscious mind of a person, or worst, of a generation. Consciously or unconsciously, there will be more male and even female, write, produce, and direct movie, which often leads to male-driven point of view, which then forms a standard for women or form a way to evaluate women, therefore more injustice. Second, people who look understand themselves as individual human subjects, not only in their own eyes and in the eyes of others, but also in a world of natural and cultural places, things, and technologies that together make up the field of the gaze. This means the way people understand and perceive themselves relies not only from their own view but also from others' view, how people and the world out there see them. Therefore, by understanding the male gaze and diminishing its toxic point of view from our visual culture, we can reform women's status in society. People will appreciate the human value more rather than expect too much from them in order to satisfy others' pleasure. Art is supposed to make you feel something, to relate and to love something, not to minimize your advantage. Remember, art is also a political way that has the power to manipulate people's thinking, discipline, and control people. So, in order to free ourselves from gender oppression, we need to be aware of every notion that impacts us, even in visual culture. To sum up, we have to be aware of the male gaze and get rid of its toxic view in order to reform the way people see women, not only in the media but also in our society. Concentrate more on their value and treat them with respect rather than shaping them as an object and in passive situation. If we have male gaze, do we have female gaze?
Moving next is a section about the female gaze. So the question here is that, what is the female gaze? Well, until now there is no official definition of what the female gaze is, since its first introduction by a film theorist, Laura Mulvey, in her essay Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. Therefore, many people have defined this concept with their own understanding. The two most popular and argumentative definitions of the female gaze is either it is the way in which women and girls look at the other females, at males, and at things in the world, or it is the way that the viewer see the object not through the windows of their eyes, but their hearts and feelings. They feel the object. Let's talk about the first definition of the female gaze. Well, according to Oxford's reference, for many, the term alludes to the right of women to adopt the active and objectifying gaze that has traditionally and stereotypically been associated with males, undermining the dominant cultural alignment of masculinity with activity and femininity with passivity. Despite the label, this does not involve replacing one form of gender essentialism with another. The objects of the gaze need not to be confined to males. So what was stated here is that for many years in the past, the action of looking and gazing at an art or beauty was something associated with males, and women were just sitting and walking around like a beautiful doll to be looked at. The concept of female were present as a counteraction, saying that women and girls do see and enjoy things under their own perspective. Basically, the beauty of objects around were portrayed through the eyes of a woman with their own standard reference instead of a male's one. Then, let's move to the other interpretations of the female gaze. Other opinion is that the female gaze is inverse of male gaze, not in a way that men being sexualized by women, nor being seen as a seductive object, but it means that if male gaze is about what people see and think, female gaze is about what people feel about that thing, understand and accept it with flaws. Here are two primary things in defining this concept. The female gaze is way of seeing feelings. It allows the viewers to feel the subject, whether they are male or female, to send the art with heart besides seeing them through eyes. It prioritizes emotions and provokes empathy. The female gaze dares to return the gaze. It tells the viewer that this is how it feels to stand here in the world, having been our entire lives. Following are the two pictures represent the story of Judith beheading Holofernes. They are excellent examples demonstrating the difference of the male gaze and female gaze about the same circumstances, along with the notion of enhancing feelings under the perspective of a woman. It is notable that these two paintings were created about 10 years apart by a couple of best friends. The first one called Judith Beheading Holofernes by Caravaggio in 1602. In this artwork, Judith was depicted as a soft and young woman who was seemingly having hesitation in her action of killing this man. She is holding a sword, with a bit quite awkward and comfortable pose for someone who is assassinating. Also, with tidy clothes on, a pose that requires not many forces, and the appearance of an old lady who doesn't seem to do much. It looks like Judith is unsure what she's doing. This doesn't really illustrate the determination of Judith to kill the brutal ruler in the story. This is a painting called Judith Laying Holofernes, created in 1613 by Artemisia Gentileschi, who is a female Italian painter and also the best friend of Caravaggio. It can be seen obviously that Judith in this picture was depicted as a more full figure and muscular woman compared to the previous one. Having a closer look at the gesture and facial expression of Judith, her sight is filled with hatred and disgust for the man in front of her. The intention of the fight can also be shown through the force she used to kill Holofernes, and one of the sleeves is even falling down. Every detail empathizes the strength and courage of Judith, as well as her curve and softness in the dress. The action of Judith was portrayed differently in the gaze of female and male. Caravaggio pictures her under the perspective of a man, with a soft and weak appearance when she was doing her mission of killing the ruler, just like a normal girl walking on the street. On the other hand, the painting of Gentileschi did a great job in enhancing the intention of the fight, as well as the power of Judith without missing her femininity under the female gaze. So the question has been raised here is that, is the female gaze good? And should it be developed and expand? And can we affirm that the male gaze is something toxic that we should eliminate? Well, it's hard to say so because of two reasons. First, in the social media era, these two definitions are being challenged every day. And second, the interpretation of the female gaze is still vague and being studied, so there's no way for us to determine all the good and bad factors of it. Here is one example. Along with the development and influence of social media, the term female gaze become well known and used more by days. On TikTok, there are trends when the user places themselves in the point of view of a character written by a woman author. And one thing about this video is that they were made both by female and male users who might approach the concept without knowledge in this field and come up with many controversial comments. Now let's look at a TikTok relating to this problem.
No, because one of the funniest ways that you can explain the male gaze versus the female gaze to a man is to tell him that a lot of girls prefer Loki over Thor and just watch him muscles, masculinity, like just do it, it's funny.
It was said that men believed girls would find Thor more attractive than Loki as he had a masculine body and masculine power. However, many girls argue that it is about the physique here, the hygiene, the slightly feminine look and power in Loki that they prefer. But it doesn't mean that all girls like Loki better. Moreover, another example can be about how under the female's perspective, male body parts are dismembered for female pleasure, like in Magic Mike. Women expect men with six-pack, abs, and so on. From this example, we can see that to some extent, the female gaze still have some expectation over its subject. It conveys how females see things and assume how things would behave, maybe based on each preference and standard. Some say these standards are actually the impact of female gaze, but we can't deny women still have their own expectation on their gender.
To summarize, without a clear official definition of what the female gaze is, people can't say anything about its benefits and detriments of it. It can be the view of a woman or the way viewers look at the object through their feelings, or it even might be the combination of the two. In art and also in real life, there's no limitation for what to look or not to look. The male and female gaze undoubtedly impacts how both men and women view and react to other women, men, and themselves. The gaze, which cannot be determined to be good or bad from one side, but they influence each other, leads to the general perception of the society and the way men and women express their gaze.